All right, everyone. I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Just a quick introduction here is my name is Colt Nelson, and I'm one of the engineers here at Allen Block, and I'll be going over some of the finishing options for walls that you guys are building. Um, and if any of you guys do have questions that you just want to ask me along the way, I'll definitely be looking periodically in the questions and chat box. If you ask anything, I'll make sure to get an answer to it as soon as I see it. So I'll just jump right in here. So just as an overview, I'll start over. What are some differences between commercial versus residential walls in regards to your finishing options, and I'll go into the other types of finishing options: step downs, turn ins, topping off. So what you can do above the wall, um, and right on top of it too, and then lighting. That's kind of a cool feature that is used a lot. And just jumping right into the commercial versus residential walls. So you'll see right away on the top right hand side there that that's more of a commercial wall. So that's serving a purpose there, as most commercial walls do. They're not usually used as something aesthetic. They definitely can be, and there's a lot that are, but oftentimes they're there as a solution, and aesthetic details aren't as crucial. So in this case, there's a catch basin allowing for drainage. So you can tell that this one probably isn't going to get viewed as much, and it's really there just to help solve any grading problems. Um, Still looks great, but if you look at the one below, that's residential retaining wall. You'll see that there's multiple terraces to it. You have different grading changes, with step downs. It's more sophisticated looking. So you've got plants in there, and it's really giving a nice aesthetic to the backyard of that home there. So that's those are two differences there. So when you're looking at your finishing options for walls, oftentimes for residential walls, that's really when you're going to get a little bit more extravagant and think outside the box, because they're not there just to serve a simple solution. They're there as um, uh, bringing life to the landscape and adding something different to it, oftentimes as well. So jumping right into step downs, on the left hand side, uh, there's just a gradual step down using the half high blocks, and on the right hand side there's the full course step down. So depending on your project, and your application, and whoever your client may be, sometimes they might want that one block step down, or maybe something a little bit more subtle, uh, going evenly into the grade. So that's one thing to note too, is using those smaller blocks just to help smooth out that, or those step downs, really makes the end of the wall look a lot nicer. And these are just some examples here. So similar to what I just showed you on the slide before, there's those AB light stones that are really helping give a more subtle grade change to the top of wall there, slowly going in um, uh, to to the earth there. And then on the bottom, you'll see that there's the full course step downs that do make those 90-degree turns right into the soil there. And there's a few different applications you can use for those too, and I'll be showing you that in a moment here. And similar to what I to the previous slide, um, using those one course step downs. In this case, you could also use two course step downs. So this could be used as a retaining wall planter. So if you wanted a little bit more separation, you could use you could step down two courses, and then you know have individual spots for planting. And then on the right hand side, again, using the more gradual step down. So at this time, making it a curve instead of just a straight line. And here are some examples of that. So at the top left, again, there's those that two course step down, and then you can see that they have some plants up there, and that looks really nice. And at the bottom too, there's that curve with that grade change there. It's slowly sloping down. And again, here are some more photos of some step downs. I'll be showing you guys just different applications and examples of all the finishing options being used, just so you can have some in mind. Maybe something to give you some ideas to think about for your future projects. And I see a question here. Yes, curves are stronger. We do like to see curves in general as to mitered corners. And there's a few reasons for that. One, it's going to save you as the contractors a lot of time constructing it, and you're not going to have to worry about cutting that block, which is something I'll get into a little bit too. But it's a lot nicer, looking for lots of applications. Adding in that curve, it's really softens it out, and it'll add more structure to that wall. So good question. And here are some more examples. I really like that example on the left-hand side. There's some step downs coming from the right there, but you can see that they added in some stairs. It goes off into a 90-degree corner into the grade there, and then there's that radius too on the left-hand side. And then on the right-hand side, there's that step down too, using those using a nice subtle step down with the half-high blocks. And similar to what we just went over, so now you can add curves instead of maybe going in 90 degrees. This could be used as a planter too, and then curving your retaining wall into a hillside too is going to really help, you know, against any erosion. It's really going to help prevent that because it'll be holding those soils back, and less chance of anything being eroded along the side of it. And some advantages to turn into. So similar to what I said about building curves instead of those mitered corners, it's going to take less time. So it's a lot quicker to just lay down the block and you know backfill and compact, and so you're not going to have to worry about cutting too. So it's going to save you a lot of time and money for that. And then you're not going to have to deal with those corner blocks too. There are a lot of applications where you'll want to use those corner blocks, but if you can use curves, that's just there's less expenses to that, and it's a lot easier to construct. And then again, erosion control. Uh, when you add in those curves too, that go into the slope, that'll help against erosion, and they're aesthetically pleasing. So they do look pretty nice, oftentimes, and it's just a lot easier. And here are some more examples of turn-ins here. You can see that that they used a patterned wall on this one, and you have a few turn-ins. There's one in the middle there, and it's curving off on the left-hand side. And those 90-degree turn-ins, so these are still great too. You can use those corner blocks. In this case, sometimes your client might want a 90-degree turn in, or there might be a certain application where you actually need that, and the corner blocks are very helpful for that. And here's an example of a turn in right outside a residential home. There's some plants up in the middle there. It looks really nice. It matches the scenery. It just goes well. It gives a good aesthetic to the landscape. And here's another example of a residential wall here, and they added a pillar at the corner. They're using those corner blocks, constructing that. So, just some creativity there, some things to think about. It matches the home well. It goes with the scenery and the landscape there. And then they've got some, plants below that too. And then as far as, topping off, so, there's lots of options for this. So at the top left, there's a retaining wall just filled with rock there. So pretty simple. You don't need to add anything extravagant to it. Just throw some rock in there, maybe some bushes there. And then on the top right, you'll see that it's finished with some stones or capstones. So those are just thrown on top there, and then they threw some plants in there. Same with on the bottom left hand side too. So they actually planted through the block itself, so they didn't even put on any capstone. So depending on the aesthetics you're going for or the application, that's one thing to consider too. You might not need caps, you could just plant right through the top of the block. And then at the bottom right, so there's the mulch similar to the top left with the rock. So in some cases you might not need those capstones. In even for again for those commercial projects too, where aesthetics aren't necessarily a concern, you might see projects without the caps if they don't need it. Maybe that retaining wall is way off on the side and no one's going to be viewing it, and that's just one less expense. And then there's that raised notch on the top there, a raised lip. So that's going to help hold in the mulch and the rock. So anything you're putting on top of that too, it's gonna stay in there. And I'll just go ahead. I'll talk about topping off with some caps. Stepping down here. So it can be done in a few different ways. It can be done where it's cut or where it's not. So um, if you don't want to cut it, you can just have it overhanging on the side there, and so that's gonna accentuate it and create a nice shadow line. And on the right hand side too, uh, there's a photo of someone actually adding chamfers to the top there. So that's kind of again creating another look. That's something you might consider for a residential project. That just adds a little bit more character and makes it a little bit nicer. And here's an example of those 90-degree turns. If you do want to modify your capstones, you'll cut two 45-degree angles at both of them, and then join them together. And you're going to want to make sure, depending on the application, to use that exterior construction grade flexible adhesive glue, making sure those caps are on there tight. And for curves here, so the way you're going to want to construct caps for curves here is you're going there's a few different ways you can do it here. So you can place two caps on top, with some space in between, and then you can mark the overlap by placing a cap in between, and then making those right cuts or the proper cuts on each side, and then sliding that in there, and then you can glue it if you need to, like normal for that. And another way too is measuring the distance between the caps. And there's a diagram at the bottom left there. You can see there's the distance um, between that gap there. Here's just another example of the 90-degree turn-ins there with the caps on top. This one looks really nice. They've got a curve on top. Uh, that's one thing you can throw in for those residential projects. You see it kind of splits off on the end there, so that kind of creates another level to that wall there, and creates a little more character, which I think is pretty neat. Another example of that here, just right in the front of someone's home, just a few courses high, two 90-degree turn-ins there. You have some stairs, some plants on each side. Similar to the other example before there, you've got that curve on top there and just a straight wall on the bottom. Here they have a lot of corners on this one, so this one goes all the way around there, and then they have a pattern look to it too, and it's kind of right in the center. So for projects like this, definitely add those capstones, and put some nice flowers in the middle of it or something. But I really like this one. You've got a lake or a river over there. It looks really nice. And lighting. So uh, I think adding lighting to the retaining walls really adds a lot of um, a cool look to it. Makes it a little bit easier to see at night as well. You're not going to be tripping over those stairs or anything, and it can be easily done. So at the top left, you can see that diagram there. You can run those electrical wires through the block. On the bottom left, there's that lighting fixture there. And I'll go ahead. I'll show some examples of this. So this one's using the uh, Aztec, and I think this one looks really nice. So again, it's tiered there. You've got really nice caps on top there. They've got some mulch in the center, some uh, some flowers in there too. And adding those lights really looks nice here. And again, you might not consider doing that on a commercial project, but you might want to add that to your toolbox if you're working on a residential project. Um, really makes the wall look accentuated. Here's another example. So you've got, it's terraced there. You've got those curves running into the grade. They've got some trees planted in there, just some small ones, some mulch in the center there too, and lights running up the stairs and kind of on the sides of the walls too. They've got some lamps on here, so they just kind of added some pillars there on this one, and then added some lamps through that, so that that's another option you might consider. And then just a quick recap with the with what we went over today. So again, those commercial versus residential walls, oftentimes those commercial walls are going to be serving a function or a solution, and they might not be viewed as much. So you might not have to be concerned about the aesthetics or the grade change. So you might not need to have those really nice looking step downs or turn ins, and you might not be as concerned with how you're topping off, as far as like adding any flowers or plants on top or what kind of caps. And you might not need lighting either. And one thing I wanted to go over too real quick is we will be having another contractor ABU online in January, on January 21st in 2020 of next year, and that's going to be going over those OSHA silica dust rules. So when you're cutting those caps, you're going to have to make sure that you're using a wet saw and there's not dust in the air. And we'll be covering all those regulations and providing you with more knowledge on that. And that's something that'll be held next year again, January 21st. And if there are any questions too, you can go ahead, you can type them in. There's also my contact information below. Um, feel free to give me a call or email me any questions that you have. And I'm not seeing any questions right now, but I do encourage you guys to reach out to us. If you are working on a project, you have questions on maybe some, anything I covered, and definitely I recommend checking out our website again, looking at our products and our galleries for the walls, just get some ideas for that, and maybe incorporate those into your projects too. So I appreciate everyone's time, and I hope you guys have a good day.